What's up, guys? Welcome back to my kitchen in Ridgewood, New York. And my bike is upside down on the floor because I don't have a bike stand. So I'm rebuilding, recabling, adjusting derailleurs on this bike, and I figured I would use this opportunity since I have my cranks off to kind of talk about bottom brackets a little bit. Just a disclaimer, this is going to be some super nerdy stuff. I just figured I'd let you know out the gate. Alright, so this is a Tarmac SL5, and this is the bottom bracket shell. Now, Specialized has its own proprietary standardization called OSBB, which, as I understand, stands for oversized bottom bracket. But in my opinion, it's kind of a fake standardization because in reality, OSBB is pretty much either press fit 30 or BB 30, which, you know, the differences between those is they both use 6806 bearings, but press fit 30 features cups that are pressed into the frame, and then the bearing is either already installed in the cup or pressed into the cup, and BB 30s normally are kind of just pressed into the frame, the bottom bracket shell themselves, and they have little C-clips behind the bearing that you can pop in and out if you want to, and those bearings fit up against those C-clips. There is a reason these standards became useful to the bicycle industry. The BB 30 standard, which was devised by Cannondale, by the way, makes the bottom bracket lighter because it's pretty much, you know, just the bearing pressed into the frame and kind of nothing else around it except for the frame and shell of your bike. It uses a larger bearing than a Shimano sized bottom bracket bearing, which would, I guess, increase durability. But unfortunately, both of these standards are infamous for creaking. They're also infamous for kind of fitting problems. You know, it's pretty difficult to mold a carbon fiber shell that is, you know, perfectly round and precise enough to facilitate, you know, fitting a bearing in, you know, without any issues. And unfortunately, at least until the SL7 came out, which features a BSA threaded bottom bracket, Specialized have pretty much dedicated themselves to these, you know, press fit standards. You know, their OSBB standard is press fit or BB 30. I think the only thing that actually makes it proprietary is the width of the spindles of the cranks they run, and the shell width, which is usually always 61 millimeters. The cups would make them 63 millimeters, I think. I don't know. So how to identify your bottom bracket? Just looking at this thing, I know this is a BB 30, and I know that for two reasons. With Specialized frames, if there's anything in the shell other than raw carbon, you know, if there's any kind of aluminum cup, you know, this is an aluminum cup that is permanently bonded into the frame. If there's any kind of aluminum anything in there, it's going to be a BB 30. And you can see where the C-clips kind of can attach in there, and this frame came with C-clips that I just popped out. If there's just raw carbon all the way through, that would be a press fit 30. And we can also tell by measuring the internal diameter. A BB 30 would be 41 millimeters internal diameter. So I got my cheap verniers that I picked up at a hardware store. Platt's Hardware in Ridgewood, if you're interested. they've been around for 100 years. So, internal diameter, look at that, 41 millimeters. For the PF30, I believe the internal diameter is 43 millimeters. So that's another way to tell. And probably the easiest way to tell. So, if you have a BB30, PF30, OSBB, or anything that's not a BSA, and you want to run Shimano cranks, you're going to run into a problem. Because Shimano cranks are 24 millimeters spindle length, and their spindle diameter is incompatible with the 6806, PF30, BB30 standard. Let's just go ahead and measure that, just out of morbid curiosity. I think it's, oh, it's fucking 24 millimeters, of course. What's the length again? I can't remember, but that's another issue of compatibility, is the spindle diameter, certainly, and the length of the spindle. So if you have PF30, BB30, or OSBB, there are a couple ways around this incompatibility issue. I think most people's go-to would be an aftermarket, either a one-piece bottom bracket that's designed specifically for Shimano cranks, or kind of like, screw together, self-inserting bottom bracket. And that's the route I went. There are a couple different companies that make these. BB30, PF30 to Shimano outboard bottom brackets. Praxis, probably the most famous, Rotor, Raceface, Sea Bear, and Wheels Manufacturing. And this is the one that I got. So I built up an SO4 Pro frame, and it was one of those aluminum all the way through BB30 C-clip things, and I popped the C-clips out, and it was just aluminum shell straight through. And I did some research and picked up the Wheels Manufacturing model. Let's take a look at this thing here. You can see there it says BB30 out, BB30 to outboard. If we measure with the vernier the outer diameter of this cup, we will see that it is, I nudged it a little, but 41 millimeters. So, check this out. Look how easy this is. What do we got here? I'm guessing this is the drive side. Check this out, guys. Look how easy this is. Just pops right in. It's not an interference fit. No press fit problems. Take the other side. Kind of hard to capture on camera. Pop that in there. And make sure it's not cross-threading. And it just screws into itself, presses itself into the frame, and voila, look at that, you're done. And you pop your crankset in there, and you're good to go. How simple and elegant of a solution that is. Get one of these things if you have an OSBB and Shimano cranks. Alright, so here's another bike I have. This is an S-Works SO4, and it's also got the OSBB standard. And I did some extensive research when I bought this frame, just so I would have things sorted out before I got it. But I read that the S-Works SO4 was a press fit, meaning that the internal diameter of the BB shell would be 43 millimeters. So in preparation of that, having had such a good experience with the Wheels manufacturing product, I got another one for this bike, this time the PF30. And my research was correct. But you could tell by the tone of my voice and the direction this video is going that I had some problems. I had to use 2 hands to unscrew that thing because it took forever. So I got this bike, and I got this bottom bracket, and then lo and behold, there's a cup in there that's not raw carbon. I'm gonna turn my flash on because we're gonna need it now. So, I was like, oh, I got the wrong bottom bracket. That's a BB30. Not a big deal because I have one of these laying around anyways, so a BB30 to outboard. So, I take this boy, drive side, non-drive side, and I go to put it in, and we got a problem there. This will not insert because of this ring here. The outer diameter of this threading body is wider than the inner diameter of the back of this cup here. You know, I was correct in that the SO4 S-Works frame is a press fit 30 standard, which leads me to believe these cups have been pressed in after the fact, which would make sense because these cups are pressed in and then you press the bearing in, and you can see a bearing in there on the other side still. And then I look inside the shell of this frame and I see 2 things. First, I see this gray stuff, which now I understand to be epoxy, ostensibly holding these cups in. And naturally, when I saw that, that kind of worried me because I thought, you know, epoxy means glue. These are bonded in there now, right? So, I kind of freaked out and thought that I couldn't explore this option. So I had to explore another option for running these Shimano cranks. And that is the shim option, which conveniently is also manufactured by Wheels Manufacturing. So I ordered this, and basically these shims kind of fit into, you know, the bearings that are already pressed into these cups, and it kind of, you know, fills the gap in the spindle length and also fills the gap in the bearing diameter. And you can run a couple spacers, you know, behind them if you need to, and in front of them if you need to, just to make sure the preload is correct. But I really didn't want to explore this option because I didn't want to add more kind of, you know, loose pieces on the bike that potentially could creak. You know, this would be a lighter option than the bottom bracket pieces, but this would be a lot stiffer and easier to maintain, and I just don't want to have anything fucking pressed in my frame. So on further inspection, you know, I kind of see the gray epoxy there, and then I look in there a little more, it kind of looks moved away to the side, and then I see this blue around up there, and that's grease, which leads me to believe that someone has already knocked these things out before, greased them, and put them back in, which means I can knock them out if I've got the balls to do it. And I kind of don't. You know, I'd rather take this thing into a bike shop than do it myself. but the inner DIYer home mechanic in me kind of prevailed, and I bought a tool off of Amazon, and should be arriving tomorrow, and we'll give it a try. The saga of the OSBB continues, because I really want to run this beautiful wheels manufacturing unit and these beautiful dura-ace cranks in this bike. Hey guys, we're back in the kitchen for the continuing saga of the OSBB. And as you can see, I got one of those cups out. I kind of just swallowed my fear and pressed it out myself at home. And I did that using this tool, which is a press fit press tool specifically designed for pressing in BBs and bearings and pushing them out. Now, obviously, Park Tool, you know, I couldn't make a home kitchen bike mechanic video without mentioning Park Tools, but they make a version of this tool set, and it is $500. And I was not about to spend that much money on a tool that I'm going to use probably like a couple times. So basically, I bought this like, you know, cheapo tool off of Amazon, and there are 100 different, you know, it's the same tool with 100 different logos on it. But if you need a press fit tool and you got like 40 or 50 bucks to spend, you know, get this thing because it works. And it didn't come with a cool carrying case, which I was disappointed, but came in this cardboard box and has pretty much everything you need here. You know, it's got these tools for these fitting pieces. You know, you can take out different size BBs with this. You can press in different size cups and whatnot. It's got pretty much everything you would need. Little nut in here. So yeah, for my purposes, you know, this is everything that I needed to do the job. And the other cup is still in on the other side, and I'm going to show you guys how to do that today. Alright, so basically how this tool works, and I needed to use this piece. You basically assemble your tool. There's this driver, this spindle, these handles, and there's a little bearing in there. Basically, you disassemble your tool to push in a cup, push out a cup rather. You just assemble your tool like this, you know, screw the handle on, bearings in there. And then you choose a piece which is the appropriate diameter to pull out whatever you need it to pull out. And for me, that was this cup behind the bearing here. And basically, I just like, you know, kind of inserted it in with my fingers, and it fit perfectly behind the bearing. Seat, and I yanked it out with this. Alright, so hopefully I can get a good angle with my phone to do this live for you guys. One thing I will mention, the other side didn't have this. It's the other side. But there's a little like magnet here that, it did have a sticker on it that said cork. I'm guessing whoever owned this bike before me had like some kind of cadence sensor that used this magnet. And using this drift, it doesn't sit exactly flush with the frame, which would be ideal, but I don't think it's going to be too big of a problem as long as, you know, I'm doing this correctly. So yeah, so basically this, how it works is, you know, that little piece is in there behind the cups, and if you choose this drift, it fits perfectly around the diameter of this cup. And once the tool is all screwed together with this end cap piece that fits inside the cup, from the inside it pushes this out towards this cup piece when you tighten the handle. And if you're using the right pieces and you know, these things can come out in the first place, it slid out pretty easily for me on the other side. I kind of destroyed the cup a little bit because I used the wrong piece for a second, it kind of freaked me out. So just, you know, make sure you're using the right assemblage of pieces so that that cup can actually clear into this piece, because it's pushing it into this, and that's how it gets the cup out. So yeah, I'm gonna set this up and try to do this live for you guys. All right, yeah, you definitely want to give yourself enough thread there so that this all works. Get it in there now. Make sure it's seated around the cup nicely. I had this spanner wrench out before to do the first one, but you kind of don't even need that. I'm looking at it from above. And yeah, just start twisting away. I can see from above it's already pushing it out. The tool isn't lined up as optimally. All right, let's get back in there. So even slightly askew at an angle, just popped it right out, and there you go. That cup is no longer in this bike. Look at that. Look how easy that was. It's a good idea to keep some paper towels laying around when you're doing this stuff, because there is a bunch of grease on this. So yeah, we can disassemble the tool now. Look at that. I was so incredibly terrified to do this. Like, I can't begin to describe to you guys. Well, that explains why my tool was a little askew. You want to do it better than I did here, but you know, the efficacy of this tool is demonstrated pretty easily by what we just did. I mean, even at a slight angle, it pressed it squarely out. So yeah, here's the tool disassembled, and there's the cup we just pressed out. Now it's pretty clear now that I have like a press fit cup in my hand, you know, really how this works. So yeah, you know, I think most press fit bottom brackets are sold with the bearings already pressed into the cup. And I suppose to get that out would be easy enough if you had the right one of those pieces, which is the bearing puller, or just a puller piece. And that was a critical, you know, component, because, and it basically sits in there and pulls it out. And that being said, that's a critical part of the, you know, process of doing this, is making sure that that is nice and square in there. So yeah, I'm hoping someone watches this and sees me do this, and with the further explanation at the beginning of this video, sees that, you know, this isn't the scariest stuff in the world to do. You know, I was terrified to do it myself, but, you know, made it happen. All right, I've turned the flash on so we can look inside and see what we have left. And you can definitely see the residual epoxy that I mentioned earlier in this video. You know, look at this. You know, it's built up here. You know, it's probably pushed in with the bottom bracket. And there's all that residual grease too. So before I fit in my new bottom bracket, I'm gonna like pull all that stuff out and clean her up really nicely. All right guys, so I genuinely tried to clean all that epoxy out of there, but honestly, you have to ask yourself sometimes, is it really even worth it? And what else would I rather be doing? And honestly, it's gonna be fine if there's a little residual epoxy in there. For our purposes, we're going to be pretty much pressing a new bottom bracket in there anyway, so let's just carry on with that. Alright guys, so it is several days later, and that's because I had to wait for some stuff in the mail to continue forward with this project. And that's the thing about this OSBB situation is, you know, it's pretty confusing. So we're coming upon a critical component of this OSBB saga. I mentioned before that the one thing that could make the OSBB an actual standard is, you know, it's either a press fit 30 or a BB 30. But if it's a true press fit 30 and there are no cups in there and you got this raw carbon in there, your shell width will be 61 millimeters. I'm also gonna include a snapshot of a diagram from Wheels Manufacturing that will kind of demonstrate this. And you can pause the video to look at that if you want to. So yeah, I've got the verniers out, and we're gonna measure the shell width of this bottom bracket. Because this is, you know, being a PF30 unit with a raw carbon shell, it is a quote-unquote true OSBB. So look what we have there. 61 millimeters. So if you just install this PF30 bottom bracket into the shell here and attempt to run your cranks, you will quickly learn that there is centimeters of play almost, and it's completely unusable. So the final piece of the puzzle are a set of spacers, conveniently also of Wheels Manufacturing. So these are, let's see what the packaging says. Check that out. SOBB. Kitten, you want to do some mechanicking? I think they mean OSBB. So basically these spacers are 3.5 millimeters, and they will kind of sit between the bottom bracket lip and the bottom bracket shell of your frame, and that will expand the total diameter of your bottom bracket by 7 millimeters, which would make your bottom bracket shell 68 millimeters, which with this PF30 unit will facilitate a proper compatibility with your Shimano cranks. Cool. You know, that was hard learned. And they're nice enough to include a bunch of spacers if your bottom bracket didn't come in enough. Kitten, seriously, I can't make a video if you like this. Alright, so we're gonna go ahead and pop this boy in, finally. And we've got a couple tools to help us along the way. We've got some grease, because you're gonna wanna grease the threads of your bottom bracket. If not, use Loctite, which I don't have, or I would use that. We've got a couple bottom bracket tools. This is a Park tool, believe it or not, BBT9, standard bottom bracket tool. This is a BBT2, another Park tool, just on the end of a socket, ratcheting mechanism. And obviously we have our PF30 bottom bracket, which for the sake of brevity I've already greased the threads. We've got our critically important 3.5 millimeter spacers. I've got some pre-greased end caps, a bunch of other spacers to help us with our chain line. And yeah, we're good to go. I suppose theoretically we can grease those bottom bracket shell. I don't know if you're supposed to do that, really. Yeah. So before we install this, out of sheer morbid curiosity, I thought it'd be a good idea to weigh this. And that's because, you know, it's said about press fit bottom brackets that, you know, they weigh less than these, you know, full bottom bracket units. And I'm gonna test that theory. So I've got my handy Bed Bath & Beyond Find non-bike specific kitchen scale. And we're zeroed out. And so basically the entirety of the press bed bottom bracket, I don't know if this originally came with a sleeve, but it didn't have a sleeve in my bike. There's a cup, there's a 6806 bearing in there, and there are 2 of those. So I'm just gonna weigh this, 38 grams, 39 grams, and multiply it by 2, which is gonna be 78 grams. Or 40 grams, so 80 grams. Let's call it 80 grams. Now we're gonna weigh the wheels manufacturing unit. Yeah, it's definitely heavier. I knew that, but let's see exactly how much heavier. There are 2 spacers, which weighed pretty much nothing. So there you go. It is heavier. By a substantial amount. 80 grams for the press bed bottom bracket versus 158 grams. Yeah, there's a weight penalty to this stuff, but you know, if you don't like creaking and fitting issues and you want to run the cranks you want to run, then that's the price you pay. Alright, so we've got our bottom bracket here, we've got our spacers. We're good to go. I'm trying to think of whether or not I should grease these spacers. I kind of would like to, but they're made of like plastic or Delrin, so I don't know if it's necessarily mandatory. So what I'll do is just grease the inside of the slip here and we'll be good to go then. So I think we're pretty safe, like greasing those inner lips there, you know. It's such a high torque area, like bottom bracket. You know, and pieces rubbing together at high torque, you know. It's not gonna hurt to have grease, and it would help eliminate any potential noise. All right, so let's go ahead and install our spacers. Yep, and they just fit right over the lip of the bottom bracket like that. And we are finally ready, after much trial and tribulation, to install this bottom bracket into this frame. Hopefully I got a decent camera angle set up there to capture this. So I'm guessing this is the drive side because it's got the logo there pointed this way out, and that would make this the non-drive side. So here we are. Just like that, screws into itself. Threads are engaged already. And once you have everything together and you've done your research, you've got the proper components and have done the work, you can enjoy the benefits of said hard work. And there we are. Got a grease thumbprint on my frame, but it's a beautiful day because this frame finally has a bottom bracket. So I'm not exactly sure what the official size of this bearing is, but we could test the internal diameter with the vernier. And what do you know? It's 24 millimeters. Let's get our cranks out. Look at that spindle there. That is 24 millimeters. Give or take some microns. Now in comparison, this 6806 bearing which all BB30s and PressFit 30 standards use, is 30 millimeters. Maybe this standardization should be called BB24. Alright guys, so I took the liberty of greasing up the shaft of this crankset in preparation to install. I've also put the bottom bracket seal and an assemblage of spacers in between it and the crank, and the exact configuration of spacers you know, would depend on your frame and your crankset. I'm kind of doing it this way because that's what I did on my other bike, and those spacers will adjust the chain line as you need them. I've got 100 of these laying around the house now because I have so many wheels manufacturing products laying around. All right, we are gonna do it. It's kind of hard to do one-handed, just like so much bike mechanicking. All right, there she goes on the other side. Use my foot for a second. So I might be the one-handed bike mechanic, but I still got 2 feet. All right. We have another bearing seal here that I've pre-greased. Just gonna pop that on the end of the spindle there. We're gonna flip the bike around. Right, so now we can take our non-drive side crank arm and just go ahead and install that. Thing I like about Shimano cranks is, you know, there's a spline connection. If you can peep that there's one big spline. So you don't ever have to worry about, you know, kind of putting your cranks on, you know, 2 degrees off or, you know, a little askew. That's on there now. Grab our Shimano end cap with a cat hair on it. Pop that in there. You want to grease the inside of there too. And make sure there's no cat hair in there. Yeah, definitely want to grease the inside of that threading part of the spindle. This is where that BBT9 comes in handy. You know, if you have 2 arms, that is. So I put a front wheel in this bike just to help us out for a second. When you've got this cap screwed in a little bit, you want to just make sure the spindle is all the way pushed into the bike, so you know, you can grab your chainstay and put your finger around the crank and give it a push to make sure it's, you know, fully seated. And then, you know, adjust this a little more to make sure it's on there tight. And then you can spin your beautiful cranks around. And I know spin tests are kind of a BS kind of demonstration of bearing quality. And I guess I think that because him Beanie told me to think that. But it's funny to see videos on Instagram of guys with their ceramic bottom brackets just spinning these for days, and sometimes spinning their whole drivetrain. It's a nice thought, but you know, when a bearing's under load, its performance should be, you know, considered then, not when it's just spinning around your bike. Certainly is entertaining. Okay, so now once you're satisfied that your spindle is pushed all the way through and you've got your preload set the way you like it, now what you can do is make sure this tab is pushed down first off, and that slots into a hole inside the crank spindle. I guess kind of just as an added security to make sure your cranks don't fall off. And now we are ready to torque those pinch bolts down. You want to test for play after you do that, because if you test for play now and the pinch bolts aren't pinched down, you'll just see your crank arm move back and forth because those aren't tightened down. So we can go ahead and do that now. Now I think that's a 5mm Allen key. Yeah, there it goes. So yeah, I'm gonna just kind of finger tighten them little by little. And I've said this so many times in so many videos, but with these multiple bolt pinch arrangements, you know, you want to do a little on both sides, one by one, so you don't put too much stress on the bolts or have to worry about damaging anything. So Shimano's torque spec for these crank pinch bolts is 12 Newton meters. That's a 5mm Allen head, and I have my torque wrench here conveniently already set up to 12 Newton meters. So we're gonna get in there and you know, little by little tighten these up until it clicks. With one arm, of course. So a little bit there. Right, guys, a little bit. Yeah, man, I need to figure out the camera situation here. I was thinking about getting a GoPro, putting it on a headband, and doing it that way. So you'll feel, even like when you're torquing these multiple bolts up, that you think you get one side pretty tight, and then you go to do the other side, and then you'll come back to that side, and you'll see that it's loose again. And this is why we do these little by little. All right, neither one of these have clicked yet. That one got pretty tight without clicking. All right, that boy clicked. Alrighty. That crankset is all torqued up and fully installed. I believe these are enduro bearings in this wheels manufacturing unit. Alright, now that everything is torqued up and tightened up, you can kind of test your play. And I don't feel any noticeable play. And you can eyeball it too and look out for play. I don't see shite, which means we're good to go. You know, I can't I can't begin to tell you guys how much of a pain in the ass just putting a set of fucking dura-ace cranks on this bike has been. It's been a long journey, but you know, there's some things that helped us out along the way. Definitely wheels manufacturing. I highly rate all of their stuff. You know, even if you need information about this stuff, just go on their website, read all of their instructions very carefully so you don't waste your time. You know, I think if there's any takeaway from all of this, aside from, you know, the bike industry being annoying as fuck with its multiple standardizations and its incompatibility issues, especially with a brand like Shimano. You know, the single largest seller of bike components, you would think that, you know, one of the largest seller of bicycle frames would just, you know, be good to go with this stuff, but no, there you go. So yeah, here's the takeaway. Do your research. Do your research. Educate yourself on this stuff. Get the right tools for the job. Get the right components. Get quality components. And that'll take you a long way. All right, guys. That's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that if you have a specialized bike with an OSBB, this kind of helped you understand it a bit better. And, you know, if you were sketched out about doing any of this stuff or procuring any of these components, this kind of educated you a little bit, showed you that it was normal and it was all right. You know, I wish that when I was trying to learn about this stuff myself, there was more content on YouTube about it, as I'm a very visual learner. And, you know, I hope I outlined pretty clearly all of the eccentricities of this whole OSBB, PressFit, BB30 stuff. And, yeah, I hope it helped. And you can go ahead and talk shit about my spin test if you want to, because that shit is not important.